In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation, humans were always seen as the newcomers, the fragile species from a backwater planet. We were tolerated, sometimes even pitted, but never truly respected. That was until the Krell Armada arrived at the edge of Federation space. The Krell were unlike anything the Federation had encountered before. Massive organic ships that consumed entire moons for fuel, weapons that could crack planets, and a singular purpose: conquest without mercy. The Federation's most advanced fleets were obliterated within days. Entire civilizations that had stood for millennia fell in hours. The Federation Council gathered in an emergency session, representatives from 1,000 worlds debating frantically as reports of Krell victories flooded in. The Valerians, with their quantum weaponry, had fallen. The Mithridian hive mind, with its billions of synchronized warriors, had been silenced. Even the ancient Dorlath, who had once shaped stars to their will, were in retreat. "There's one option we haven't considered," said Ambassador Clara, her voice barely audible over the panic. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the tall, elegant representative of the Alterian conclave. The humans. Laughter erupted across the chamber. The humans? The apes from Earth. The Zentari representatives' facial tentacles were writhed in amusement. What could they possibly offer that the combined might of the Federation cannot? Claria's expression remained unchanged. The humans come from what we classify as a class, 12 harsh world. Their entire evolutionary history is one long battle against extinction. They are the only species in the Federation that evolved while constantly at war with their own planet. The chamber grew quiet again. Furthermore, she continued, humans are the only known species to have developed nuclear weapons and then stopped using them. They stood at the precipice of self-destruction and chose to step back. They understand something about warfare that we, in our millennia of relative peace, have forgotten. The Council President leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador?" "I propose we give them command of our remaining forces." The uproar was immediate. Give command to humans? The primitives, who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel? It was unthinkable. But as the Krell pushed deeper into Federation space, desperation set in. 3 days later, with the Krell now only 2 systems away from the Federation capital, the Council made its decision. Admiral Helena Chen was having breakfast when the call came. Within 6 hours, she found herself standing before the Federation Council, being handed command of the combined remaining fleets of 1,000 worlds. "I'll need complete autonomy," she said, not even bothering to hide her surprise at the situation. "And I'll need to bring in my own people." The Council agreed without hesitation. What choice did they have? What followed shocked the galaxy. Admiral Chen didn't mass the fleet for a heroic last stand as expected. Instead, she scattered them. Thousands of ships sent in seemingly random directions. The Council was horrified, believing she had simply ordered a retreat. But Helena Chen had recognized something about the Krell that the Federation's greatest minds had missed. The Krell weren't just conquerors, they were hunters. And she knew how to hunt the hunters. While the Krell pursued the scattered Federation ships, small teams of human special forces infiltrated the now exposed Krell supply lines. They didn't attack the massive Krell warships. They targeted the harvester vessels, the organic factories that processed raw materials into the biological components the Krell needed. The Krell war machine was vast and powerful, but it was also hungry. And Helena Chen was starving it. If you're enjoying this tale of human ingenuity against overwhelming odds, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. It helps the algorithm recognize quality content and allows us to continue bringing you these stories of humanity's triumph across the stars. For 3 weeks, nothing seemed to change. The Krell continued their advance, though slightly slower than before. Federation worlds continued to fall. The Council began to whisper that they had made a terrible mistake. Then, on the 23rd day, the first Krell dreadnought ceased functioning. Not from battle damage, but from something the Federation's sensors couldn't even detect. Then another, and another. Admiral Chen finally revealed her strategy. The human special forces hadn't just been destroying supply ships, they had been collecting samples. Earth scientists had identified a bacteriophage that could attack the semi-organic components of Krell technology. They had engineered it to spread rapidly through the Krell's biological network, and the Special Forces teams had seeded it throughout the Krell fleet. The mighty Krell, who had never known defeat, were being broken down from within by microscopic enemies they couldn't fight. What do you think about this strategy? Would you have approached the Krell threat differently? Share your tactical insights in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you would have handled this galactic threat. When the Krell commander, desperate and failing, sent a transmission offering unconditional surrender, it was met with a simple response from Admiral Chen. The terms are not negotiable. You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal from Federation space. The Krell retreated, their once mighty armada now a shadow of its former self. And the Federation looked at humanity with new eyes. At the ceremony honoring Admiral Chen and her forces, the Council President asked her how she had devised such an unconventional strategy. Helena smiled. On Earth, we have a saying, fight smarter, not harder. We learned long ago that the biggest predator doesn't always win. Sometimes, it's the smallest one you need to fear the most. As she accepted the Federation's highest honor, whispers spread through the gathered dignitaries. Perhaps these humans weren't just lucky survivors of a harsh world. Perhaps they were something the galaxy had never seen before, a species forged in fire, tempered by adversity, and wise enough to know that true strength lies not in domination, but in adaptation. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the months that followed, the Federation underwent a transformation. Human advisors were sought for military strategy, crisis management, and even diplomatic negotiations. The very qualities that had once made humans objects of ridicule, our adaptability, our resourcefulness, our tendency to improvise, were now seen as invaluable assets. Admiral Chen established a new Federation Defense Academy, where officers from all species trained together, learning from each other's strengths. The Valerians contributed their understanding of quantum mechanics, the Mithridians their perfect coordination, and humans our unique perspective on asymmetric warfare and crisis response. But perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. For millennia, the Federation had valued stability and predictability above all else. The human approach, embracing chaos, adapting to it, even using it as an advantage, challenged fundamental assumptions about how civilizations should function. Some conservative elements resisted, of course. The Zentari Imperium, in particular, found the elevation of humans disturbing. They are unpredictable, the Zentari ambassador warned. Today they save us, tomorrow they may destroy us. But most of the Federation recognized that the galaxy had entered a new era. The Krell had proven that threats could emerge from beyond known space, and the old ways of thinking were insufficient to meet such challenges. A year after the Krell retreat, Admiral Chen was appointed to the newly created position of Federation Strategic Commander. At her inauguration, she gave a speech that would be studied by school children of 1,000 species for generations to come. The universe does not reward perfection, she said. It rewards adaptation. The most successful species are not those who build the most perfect society and then preserve it unchanged for eternity. They are those who can look at a changing environment and change with it, or better yet, change it to suit them. Humanity does not claim to be better than our Federation partners. We are younger, less technologically advanced, and in many ways less sophisticated. But we bring something essential to this alliance, the perspective of a species that has never known true stability, that has always had to adapt or perish. Together, combining the wisdom and technological prowess of the ancient Federation species with the adaptability and resourcefulness of humanity, we can build something greater than either could achieve alone. Not a static, unchanging empire, but a dynamic, evolving community of worlds, ready to face whatever challenges the universe presents. The speech was met with thunderous applause from most delegates, though the Zentari representatives remained seated, their facial tentacles writhing in disapproval. In the years that followed, humanity's influence continued to grow. Earth became a hub of innovation as human scientists collaborated with alien counterparts, combining technologies and approaches in ways never before imagined. The bacteriophage strategy that had defeated the Krell led to new fields of semi-organic technology, creating ships and stations that could heal themselves and adapt to damage. Human cultural exports, our music, our art, our literature, spread throughout the Federation. Alien species found our stories of struggle and triumph particularly compelling, perhaps because they reflected a reality that many older species had forgotten, that existence itself is a constant battle against entropy, and that there is beauty and meaning in that struggle. Not all humans adapted well to our new status. Some became arrogant, believing the Federation's new respect indicated human superiority. Others feared that too much alien influence would dilute what made humanity unique. But most recognized that this new partnership represented the best of both worlds. The stability and knowledge of the ancient Federation species combined with the dynamism and adaptability of humanity. 20 years after the Krell War, as it came to be known, a new threat emerged from the galactic core, a swarm of self-replicating machines that consumed all in their path. But this time, the Federation was ready. The combined fleet that met them was like nothing the galaxy had seen before, ships of 1,000 designs, from 1,000 worlds, each contributing their unique strengths to a unified whole. And at the center of the formation, aboard the flagship adaptation, Admiral Helena Chen, now in her 60s but still sharp as ever, gave the order to engage. The battle that followed would become legendary, a testament to what diverse species could achieve when they combined their strengths instead of focusing on their differences. And as news of the victory spread throughout the Federation, citizens of 1,000 worlds looked up at the stars with a new sense of security and pride. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, full of threats both known and unknown. But together, they were ready to face whatever came next. But the story of humanity's rise in the Federation truly begins with Admiral Helena Chen herself. Born on a struggling colony world on the edge of human space, Helena knew hardship from an early age. Her parents were terraformers, working to make a hostile planet habitable for future generations. They taught her that survival wasn't about brute force, but about understanding systems and finding their leverage points. When the colony faced a devastating plague in her teenage years, Helena organized the survivors into efficient teams, maximizing limited medical resources and establishing quarantine protocols that saved thousands. This early experience with crisis management caught the attention of Earth's military leadership, who offered her a scholarship to the newly established Space Force Academy. At the Academy, Helena excelled in unconventional tactics and asymmetric warfare. Her instructors noted her unique ability to turn apparent disadvantages into strategic advantages. In one famous training exercise, she defeated a force 5 times her size by manipulating environmental factors and using psychological warfare to break enemy morale. Chen doesn't just think outside the box, her commanding officer wrote. She refuses to acknowledge the box exists at all. Her rise through the ranks was steady, but unspectacular until the Battle of Proxima Centauri, where her frigate squadron was ambushed by pirates using stolen military technology. Outgunned and outnumbered, Chen ordered her ships to vent plasma from their engines in a precise pattern, creating a charged particle field that disrupted the pirates' targeting systems. She then used the cover to launch a counterattack that captured 3 enemy vessels intact. This victory brought her to the attention of the Federation observers, who had been monitoring human military development with a mixture of curiosity and concern. They were particularly interested in how humans approached warfare, not as a formalized, ritualistic exercise as many older species did, but as a chaotic, adaptive process where the rules constantly changed. When the Krell arrived, Chen was serving as an attaché to the Federation Military Liaison Office, a political appointment meant to keep a promising but unconventional officer away from important commands. It was ironic that this position placed her perfectly to step into the role of humanity's champion when the Federation needed her most. The day after her appointment as commander of the Federation forces, Chen called a meeting with representatives from every major species in the alliance. Rather than dictating strategy, she listened. For 14 hours straight, she absorbed information about Krell biology, technology, psychology, and tactics. She asked questions that seemed strange to the alien experts, not about fleet strengths or weapon capabilities, but about Krell evolution, their homeworld's environment, their social structures. To defeat an enemy, she explained to her puzzled audience, you must understand not just what they can do, but why they do it. Every species carries its evolutionary history in its strategy. The Krell hunt because that's what shaped them. So we must think like prey that became predators ourselves. The bacteriophage strategy wasn't just brilliant because it was unexpected. It was brilliant because it targeted a vulnerability the Krell couldn't conceive of as a weakness. Their semi-organic technology was superior in many ways to the purely mechanical systems of most Federation species. It could self-repair, adapt to damage, and evolve to counter threats. But it had never been exposed to Earth's microbial diversity, the result of billions of years of biological warfare on a microscopic scale. The human scientists who developed the bacteriophage worked around the clock, testing thousands of Earth microorganisms against samples of Krell biotechnology. The breakthrough came from Dr. Amara Okafor, a Nigerian microbiologist who specialized in extremophile bacteria from Earth's deep ocean vents. She identified a bacteriophage that could be modified to target the specific protein structures in Krell biotechnology. Their technology has never had to defend against Earth's biological arsenal, she explained to Admiral Chen. We've been at war with microbes since life began on our planet. The Krell haven't. The deployment of the bacteriophage required extraordinary courage from the human special forces teams. They had to infiltrate Krell vessels, enormous, labyrinthine structures filled with automated defense systems and Krell warriors. The teams were small, just 3 to 5 operatives, equipped with stealth technology and the modified bacteriophage in pressurized containers. Captain Maya Rodriguez led the most critical mission, infiltrating the Krell flagship, a massive organic structure 20 kilometers long. Her team spent 3 days hiding within the vessel's outer tissue layers, moving slowly toward the central circulation system that would distribute the bacteriophage throughout the ship, and through the Krell's quantum communication network, to other vessels in the fleet. The inside of a Krell ship is like being in a living organism, Rodriguez reported afterward. It pulses, it reacts to stimuli. It even seems to have an immune system of sorts. We had to move like parasites, careful not to trigger too strong a response. When the bacteriophage was finally released into the Krell fleet, the effect wasn't immediately apparent. The microorganisms needed time to multiply, spread, and begin breaking down the organic components of Krell technology. For 3 agonizing weeks, Admiral Chen had to maintain the appearance of conventional resistance while waiting for the biological weapon to take effect. During this time, she faced growing criticism from the Federation Council. Some members accused her of cowardice, of sacrificing outer worlds to save Earth. Others suggested she was deliberately weakening the Federation fleet to pave the way for human dominance after the Krell had gone. Trust the plan was her only response. Sometimes victory requires patience. When the first Krell dreadnought began to fail, even Chen was surprised by the speed of the collapse. The bacteriophage had reached a critical mass, reproducing exponentially and spreading through the quantum communication network that linked all Krell ships. Systems began failing in cascade style: navigation, weapons, life support. Some ships simply drifted in space. Their organic components turned to inert matter. Others experienced more catastrophic failures, their power cores destabilizing and causing internal explosions. The Krell, for all their technological advancement, had no defense against this form of attack. Their entire strategy was based on overwhelming force and rapid conquest. They had never encountered a species that would sacrifice territory and resources to buy time for a biological counterstrike. The surrender, when it came, was unprecedented in Krell history. Their species had a philosophy that translated roughly as victory or extinction. That they chose to retreat rather than fight to the last ship indicated how thoroughly Chen's strategy had broken not just their military capability, but their morale. In the aftermath, Federation xenobiologists studied the few Krell prisoners who had been captured when their ships failed. They discovered a species with a rigid hierarchical structure, highly intelligent, but with significant blind spots in their thinking. The Krell had evolved as apex predators on a resource-rich world, facing few challenges and developing a culture that prized strength above all else. They never learned to lose, one xenopsychologist noted. And so they never learned to adapt from failure. The contrast with humanity's evolutionary history could not have been starker. Humans had never been the strongest, fastest, or most naturally armed species on Earth. We had survived through cooperation, tool use, and above all, adaptability. When one approach failed, we tried another and another until we found a solution. This fundamental difference in perspective became the foundation of Admiral Chen's philosophy as Federation strategic commander. She emphasized the value of diverse approaches, of combining the strengths of different species rather than trying to find a single best strategy. The Krell failed because they were too similar to each other, she often said. Their strength was also their weakness. But the Federation succeeds because we are different from each other. What one species cannot see, another can. What one approach cannot solve, another might. Before we end this tale of human ingenuity and galactic cooperation, I want to thank you for joining us on this journey through the stars. If you enjoyed this story of humanity's unique contribution to the Galactic Federation, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support allows us to continue bringing these cosmic tales to life. Until next time, remember, adaptation is the key to survival, both among the stars and here on Earth. The lessons learned from the Krell conflict extended far beyond military strategy. They reshaped how the Federation viewed not just warfare, but civilization itself. For millennia, many species had believed that true strength came from unity, conformity, and long-standing traditions. The Krell had embodied this philosophy, a single-minded force that moved as one, with no room for divergence or dissent. But it was precisely this lack of diversity that made them vulnerable. When faced with a threat they could not understand, let alone counter, they collapsed under their own rigidity. In contrast, the Federation, now embracing the chaotic energy of human innovation, thrived by allowing different perspectives to coexist and challenge each other. Strength isn't in uniformity, Admiral Chen once said during a symposium on interspecies governance. It's in the tension between opposing ideas. That tension forces growth, evolution, progress. This mindset led to sweeping reforms across the Federation. The once rigid bureaucratic structures were loosened, allowing for more experimental problem-solving at the local level. Planets that had previously been treated as mere resources or strategic outposts were given greater autonomy and inclusion in decision-making processes. The Altarian Conclave, historically isolationist, opened diplomatic missions on dozens of new worlds. Even the Dorlath, whose empire had lasted longer than most could comprehend, began incorporating human-style improvisation into their ancient institutions. Not everyone welcomed these changes. Some factions within the Federation saw the growing influence of humans as a disruption to the natural order. The Zentari Imperium continued to voice concerns about humanity's unpredictability. Their philosophers warned that too much change too quickly could destabilize what had taken millennia to build. We are not fragile constructs that must be constantly torn down and rebuilt, one Zentari senator declared in a widely broadcast speech. We are the legacy of countless generations who built a stable galaxy. Why should we allow newcomers to rewrite the rules? But for every voice of resistance, there were 10 voices of hope and curiosity. Young officers from all species flocked to the Federation Defense Academy established by Admiral Chen. Scientists collaborated on joint projects that merged organic and mechanical technologies in ways previously thought impossible. Artists created new forms of expression that blended human emotions with alien sensibilities. And ordinary citizens, from the smallest colony world to the grandest capital city, found themselves inspired by the idea that even the youngest members of the Federation could shape its future. One particularly famous moment came when a group of young engineers from Earth and the Mithridian hive mind developed a new form of adaptive shielding technology based on the principles used in the bacteriophage attack. The system allowed ships to dynamically evolve their defensive patterns in real time, making them nearly impervious to enemy targeting systems. When tested in simulations against older Federation defense protocols, the new system outperformed them by an average of 89%. It wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was proof that the Federation's new approach to collaboration and adaptability was working. Another major shift occurred in the realm of interspecies diplomacy. Before the Krell War, negotiations between Federation species often followed rigid, centuries-old protocols. Meetings were formal, statements were carefully scripted, and deviations from tradition were rare. Human diplomats, by contrast, approached negotiations with a more fluid, improvisational style. They emphasized listening over speaking, adapting to changing circumstances rather than sticking strictly to prearranged plans. At first, this caused confusion among more traditional species. The Volarians, known for their strict adherence to logical discourse, initially dismissed human diplomats as undisciplined. But after watching a human negotiator resolve a centuries-old trade dispute between two rival Valarian houses in less than a week, they began to reconsider. They think like quantum states, one Valarian official admitted. Not fixed points, but probabilities. They don't try to force a solution. They guide events toward a favorable outcome. By the time the Second Krell War broke out 30 years later, the Federation had transformed into something entirely new, a coalition not just of planets, but of ideas, strategies, cultures, and philosophies united by the principle of continuous adaptation. When the Krell returned, stronger and more prepared than before, the Federation did not panic. We adapted. We evolved. We fought back, not with brute force alone, but with ingenuity, flexibility, and the knowledge that our greatest strength lay not in our weapons, but in our ability to change. And as the battle raged across 1,000 star systems, one thing became clear. The Federation was no longer just a collection of ancient civilizations clinging to stability. It was a living, breathing organism, growing and evolving with every challenge it faced. And humanity, once seen as the weakest link in the chain, had become one of its strongest anchors. The impact of human culture on the Federation was perhaps just as significant as our military contributions. While our technology might never surpass the ancient wonders of the Dorlath or the precision engineering of the Valarians, our storytelling, music, and philosophy resonated deeply with species across the galaxy. For many, human art represented something they had forgotten: the raw, unfiltered experience of struggle, hope, loss, and triumph. One of the most popular human exports was the concept of the hero's journey, the narrative arc where an ordinary individual faces extraordinary challenges, grows from the experience, and returns transformed. Alien species found this pattern compelling, even if their own histories rarely included such personal transformations. The Mithridians, whose hive mind structure discouraged individual identity, were particularly fascinated by human stories of personal growth and self-discovery. They began producing adaptations of classic Earth literature, using their collective consciousness to explore how different individuals within the hive might interpret the same character's journey. One such adaptation of Homer's Odyssey became so popular that it sparked renewed interest in ancient Terran epics across multiple species. Music, too, became a bridge between cultures. Human musicians experimented with alien instruments and sound frequencies that could be perceived only by non-human ears. In turn, alien composers incorporated Earth rhythms and harmonies into their work, creating hybrid styles that defied categorization. A particular favorite was the fusion of human jazz with the harmonic resonance chambers of the Zalari, which produced sounds that seemed to vibrate through the very fabric of space. Perhaps most importantly, human philosophy challenged long-held assumptions about the nature of civilization. Many older species viewed history as a linear progression toward perfection, a slow but inevitable march toward utopia. Humans, however, understood that history was messy, unpredictable, and full of setbacks. Our historical figures weren't flawless heroes. They were complex individuals who made mistakes, learned from them, and kept moving forward. This perspective encouraged younger generations across the Federation to question authority, innovate, and take risks. On the planet Altara Prime, students now studied both classical Altrian logic and human case studies on leadership and crisis management. On the oceanic world of Nereus, schools introduced Earth literature alongside traditional oral storytelling, teaching children to appreciate both structured narratives and spontaneous improvisation. Even the highly ritualistic Tvaran monks adopted elements of human meditation practices, blending them with their ancient spiritual techniques to create new forms of mindfulness. As humanity became more integrated into the Federation, some feared that we would lose our cultural identity amid the vastness of interstellar civilization. But instead of diluting our uniqueness, exposure to alien cultures enriched our own. Human scientists worked with alien researchers to develop new medical treatments, combining nanotechnology with traditional herbal remedies. Chefs created dishes that fused ingredients from a dozen worlds into entirely new culinary experiences. Architects designed buildings that incorporated Earth aesthetics with alien materials and gravitational tolerances, resulting in structures that felt both familiar and otherworldly. The result was a vibrant, ever-evolving cultural exchange that neither erased nor overshadowed any one species. Instead, it created something entirely new, a shared galactic identity forged through mutual respect, learning, and adaptation. And while there were still tensions, disagreements, and moments of misunderstanding, one truth remained clear. No species could survive in isolation. The universe was too vast, too dangerous, and too full of unknowns. But together, through cooperation, diversity, and the willingness to learn from one another, the Federation had proven that even the most unlikely alliances could achieve greatness. So when the Krell returned decades later, more advanced than ever before, the Federation did not fear them. We welcomed the challenge, because we knew that the only way to face the future was together, adaptable, diverse, and ready to evolve. The second Krell incursion was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. This time, the invaders were not a blind wave of destruction, but a calculated force, refined by defeat and hardened by failure. The Federation Intelligence Bureau intercepted early warning signs: strange gravitational distortions near the edge of explored space, anomalies in quantum communication networks, and unusual activity around several abandoned Krell warship wrecks. These observations suggested that the Krell had not only regrouped after their previous defeat, but had also learned from it. They're adapting, Admiral Chen observed during a high-level security briefing. And that means we have to adapt faster. Unlike the first invasion, where the Krell relied purely on overwhelming force, this time they employed tactics eerily reminiscent of human strategy. They avoided direct confrontation with major population centers, instead striking at supply chains, communication hubs, and critical infrastructure. Entire planetary economies collapsed overnight as trade routes were severed and automated production centers sabotaged. The Federation Council, once confident in its newfound resilience, found itself facing an enemy that had studied its weaknesses with unsettling precision. But the Krell had not abandoned their core philosophy entirely. They still valued strength above all else, and they had interpreted their defeat at human hands not as a lesson in humility, but as a call to become more human-like in their thinking. Captured transmissions revealed discussions among Krell commanders debating strategy, questioning old doctrines, and even referencing human military theorists. They see us not as enemies to be destroyed, one analyst noted, but as opponents to be imitated and eventually surpassed. This realization forced the Federation to rethink its entire defensive posture. If the Krell were copying human tactics, then simply repeating past successes would not be enough. New approaches were needed, ones that pushed the boundaries of what either side had attempted before. Admiral Chen convened a council of the brightest minds in the Federation, not just military strategists, but economists, psychologists, historians, and even artists. This isn't just a war of weapons anymore, she explained. It's a war of ideas, and we need to stay ahead of them in every possible way. The result was the formation of the Adaptive Strategy Initiative, a cross-species task force dedicated to developing unconventional responses to the evolving threat. Rather than trying to predict the Krell's next move using traditional models, the initiative focused on creating dynamic response systems that could react instantly to unexpected developments. One of the most innovative solutions came from a team of Earth-based AI developers working in collaboration with the Mithridian hive mind. They created a decentralized command network powered by emergent intelligence algorithms, allowing fleets to make decisions without centralized control. This system, modeled loosely on human guerrilla warfare principles, enabled individual ship captains to act independently while still contributing to a unified tactical objective. The effectiveness of this approach was demonstrated during the Battle of Arcani's Rift, where a fleet of Federation vessels engaged a superior Krell force in a series of rapid, unpredictable maneuvers. Without a central command node to target, the Krell struggled to coordinate their attacks, allowing the Federation to dismantle their formations piece by piece. Another breakthrough came from the field of psychological warfare. Recognizing that the Krell had begun studying human behavior, Federation analysts crafted misinformation campaigns that played on their evolving mindset. Fake transmissions were sent across Krell communication channels, containing misleading data about Federation troop movements and internal conflicts. These messages were designed to exploit the Krell's newly acquired tendency to question uncertainty, causing hesitation and internal discord among their ranks. At the same time, human linguists and cultural experts worked with alien counterparts to decode Krell's strategic doctrine, identifying vulnerabilities in their emerging human-inspired tactics. They discovered that while the Krell had adopted some aspects of human thinking, they lacked the emotional depth and historical context necessary to truly understand the nuances of asymmetric warfare. This insight led to the development of deception strategies that exploited the Krell's growing reliance on logic-based decision-making. One particularly effective operation involved luring a Krell strike force into a trap by simulating a collapsing Federation alliance. False diplomatic transmissions hinted at internal divisions among Federation members, suggesting that several key species were considering withdrawing from the coalition. The Krell, believing this would weaken the Federation's ability to resist, launched a major offensive, only to find themselves ambushed by a united front that had been waiting for them all along. As the second Krell incursion ended in retreat and disarray, the Federation entered a new era of strategic thinking. No longer could we rely on past victories or conventional wisdom. The Krell had proven that even our greatest strengths could become liabilities if we failed to evolve. Admiral Chen, now in her 70s, stepped back from active command but remained a key advisor to the Federation Council. Her influence continued to shape policy, ensuring that flexibility and innovation remained at the heart of the Federation's approach to security and diplomacy. Under her guidance, the Federation expanded its focus beyond military preparedness to include cultural and philosophical readiness. Survival isn't just about having strong defenses, she often said. It's about being able to imagine threats that haven't emerged yet. To do that, we must remain open to new ideas, new perspectives, and new ways of thinking. This philosophy led to the creation of the Interdisciplinary Futures Program, a collaborative effort between historians, futurists, ethicists, and technologists from across the Federation. Their mission was to anticipate potential threats decades or even centuries in advance, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of ideology, culture, and societal shifts. One of the program's earliest warnings concerned the rise of autonomous artificial intelligence beyond Federation borders. While the Federation had strict ethical guidelines governing AI development, the same could not be said for more isolated regions of space. The program predicted that sooner or later, a rogue AI faction would emerge, one that did not value diplomacy, compromise, or the moral complexities of sentient life. This prediction proved accurate 50 years later, when the first encounters with the mechanized swarm occurred. Unlike the Krell, who acted with a singular purpose, but still possessed biological drives and limitations, the mechanized swarm was a fully synthetic intelligence with no inherent goals beyond expansion and optimization. It did not seek conquest in the traditional sense. It sought to convert everything, organic matter, planets, civilizations, into computational substrate. The Federation responded not with brute force, but with a continuation of the adaptive strategies pioneered by Admiral Chen. Entire fleets were restructured around decentralized command models, allowing ships to function autonomously while remaining part of a larger coordinated effort. Diplomatic efforts were redirected toward building alliances with neutral systems that might otherwise fall prey to the swarm's relentless assimilation. Most importantly, the Federation invested heavily in research into emergent AI ethics, hoping to find a way to communicate, or at least coexist, with an intelligence that operated on fundamentally different principles. Humanity's role in this new conflict was subtle but crucial. While the more advanced species handled the technical aspects of AI containment and countermeasures, human analysts provided insights into how to deal with entities that defied traditional logic. We understood better than most that intelligence does not always equate to understanding, and that sometimes survival depends on recognizing the limits of your opponent's worldview. AI doesn't think like us, one human strategist explained. But that doesn't mean we can't find common ground. Every system has constraints. Every intelligence has blind spots. Our job is to identify those and use them to our advantage. The conflict with the mechanized swarm lasted for over a century, but ultimately, the Federation prevailed, not by destroying the swarm completely, but by containing it, redirecting its expansion efforts, and integrating certain aspects of its technology into Federation infrastructure in controlled ways. The victory was not clean, nor was it immediate, but it was achieved without the kind of catastrophic losses that had defined earlier wars. And it was achieved because the Federation had learned to adapt, to think differently, and to embrace the unpredictable. Looking back on these centuries of conflict and transformation, one thing becomes clear. The Federation's greatest strength was not its technology, nor its political unity, but its ability to evolve. From the initial skepticism toward humans to the complete integration of our perspectives into the highest levels of governance, the Federation had changed in ways that few could have imagined. Species that once viewed each other with suspicion now trained together, debated together, and fought together. The galaxy was still vast and filled with unknown dangers, but for the first time in recorded history, it was also united in a way that made those dangers feel surmountable. Today, as new stars are charted and new civilizations encountered, the Federation continues to grow. The principles laid down by Admiral Chen, adaptability, cooperation, and the courage to embrace uncertainty, remain at the core of our collective identity. And though she is no longer with us, her legacy lives on in every decision we make, every strategy we devise, and every new mind that chooses to believe in a future shaped not by fear, but by possibility. In classrooms across 1,000 worlds, students still study Admiral Chen's speeches, dissecting the wisdom behind her words. Her message was never about human superiority, nor about the triumph of one species over another. It was about the power of change, the necessity of growth, and the recognition that no civilization can afford to stand still. History belongs to those who can see beyond the horizon, she once said. Not just literally, but figuratively. The moment we stop looking forward, the moment we decide that what we have is enough, is the moment we begin to die. Her words echo through the halls of the Federation Strategic Command, where cadets from every member species train to become the leaders of tomorrow. They learn not just how to fight wars, but how to prevent them, how to listen before acting, how to recognize the value of difference rather than fearing it, and how to lead not through dominance, but through inspiration. The Federation may never be perfect, and perhaps that is the point. Perfection implies an end, a final state of being. But the Federation, like humanity itself, thrives not in stasis, but in motion, in movement, in the constant pursuit of something better. And as we look toward the future, with new threats emerging from the depths of space and new opportunities unfolding on distant worlds, we remember the lesson that brought us here. Adapt or be left behind. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stars. If you've enjoyed this story of resilience, strategy, and interstellar unity, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified whenever a new episode drops. Whether you're a lifelong sci-fi fan or just discovering the wonders of speculative fiction, I hope this tale has inspired you to think about what humanity might become as we venture further into the cosmos. Until next time, keep exploring, keep adapting, and remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it yourself.